So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Gale playing Moira, and honestly, she's one of my favorite characters that's ever been released into this game, as far as the characters, after the game actually came out. I was really excited for Doomfist, but he didn't work out so well. But with Moira, she is very good from the get-go, at least I think most people agree that. Very fun, very playable, does a lot of damage, has a ton of healing, works amazing with dive comps, push comps, kind of tanky comps, works well to counter spam comps. She does a ton right now. Maybe doesn't work way too well with Genji, Tracer, Pharah, or any character that's to push up way too much, but still, she can do a ton. And I feel like what's so great about this character is just her damage and her healing output. She has a good amount of damage for a support at a very long range, especially if you put down your damage orb, and her healing is one of the best in the entire game, especially if you put out your healing orb. So I think there's overall just a lot that you can kind of do with this character. Now, one thing that I want to talk about that I don't feel like a lot of people will is that Moira is a character that's kind of weird because you actually don't really want to play around corners for the most part. With most other characters, I always say, play around corners, make sure you come in and out, and you dip some damage, you get your burst out. Moira doesn't really have any burst. I mean, you can kind of counter Orb's burst, like a orb melee, but for the most part, you just want to be, behind your tanks, a lot of line of sight, and kind of play protectively like that. One thing about her, though, is that you don't always have to stay super far behind your tanks. If you don't have your shift up, you should be behind them. But if your shift's not up, you can actually go pretty far up and deal a lot of damage, get a lot of ult charge, and go in from there. That's one thing I should say. She does have one of the fastest ults to charge in the entire game, so make sure to go with that. Make sure to actually use it quite often. I know for the most part, people, they want to save their ults, and while you should, kind of save it for team fights, you should be using it quite often. And even if your team's having like a small 3v3 skirmish or something like that, you shouldn't be way too afraid about using your ultimate. Now, if you do use your ult, make sure to use your orb before the ult comes out. I'm not sure if that happened right here. He went for his orb, or he went for his ultimate really quickly. But for the most part, make sure you put that out. A really good thing to do is put down the healing on yourself so that you can, stay alive while you're getting out all of your damage. Because in this form, I don't think that you self-heal with your ultimate. I know with your ultimate fire you do, but I don't think your ultimate does. Don't quote me on that, but still, it's a good idea to just be able to make so that you are safe within your healing and everything like that. As far as playstyle, again, he's pushing up past the cart. What you should do is push up past the cart if the enemies don't have any CC. The enemy team right now has no way to stun Moira to get him stuck, but if they had like a McCree or something, don't ever play in the flashbang range. I think that should be pretty obvious, but I see a lot of people just going way too close up, and especially on King of the Hill, you do have to play a little bit further back so that you don't just get randomly picked off by a lot of crowd control. But in this game, the enemy team has almost no crowd control, so again, the Moira player can just do whatever he really wants to. Now, something that's kind of weird is that there is an enemy Moira, and at the very beginning of the game, we actually saw them duking it out. If you are Moira versus Moira, just kind of expect to never kill each other, and to just try to get as much ult charge as you can, honestly, because that's kind of how it goes. Overall, with this character, you don't really try to play her to get a ton of kills. You try to play her to get a lot of damage, to get a lot of, elims, because, you are getting a lot of damage on multiple characters. But actually finishing off people is kind of hard with this character. So do keep that in mind. You do need some people on your team that can finish off kills. I mean, you can as this character, but her damage just isn't really high enough to go through most other healing. I mean, even self-healing with a lot of people. So do, just kind of keep that in your head. What you can do, though, a lot, which is helpful, is to help your flankers, because oftentimes your range is almost good enough to kind of help those guys. Unfortunately, right there, Moira gets picked up by the Genji, can't really stay alive all the time. But, did the best that he possibly could. And I'm saying he because the player is a he. So that's why I'm referring to it as he. So there you go. I guess going on from here, we see another ultimate up. Coming right here. When you go for your ultimate, unfortunately right there, he didn't even have his orb up, so he couldn't go for that. You don't have to worry way too much about that. It's just a thing you should kind of get used to. He stayed behind the cart, going next to the cart as well. It will heal you up, make sure you can get your ultimate up. And with your ult, you always want to use it kind of like a counter ult to heal more than a killing ult to get a lot of damage. Now, you can kill with this ultimate. It's not impossible. Right here, we can also see just how fast this thing charges. It's ridiculous. But yeah, you can heal with this thing. Definitely not impossible. But not heal. You can kill with this thing, but for the most part, it's better to heal. It heals a lot more than it damages, and of course, you can heal everybody on your team at once. Well, for the most part, when you're playing, the enemies don't really group up when you're ulting. They try to not all get hit by it at the same time. While you should be able to tell your teammates, "Hey guys, group up. I can heal you all at the same time." Especially if you have an Ana, this is even better. You can heal like as much as Transcendence per second if you put out your orb and your ult and the Ana. So I don't know. Kind of keep that in mind. It's something that's definitely worth your time. Looking at the orb a bit again, I guess, as it's one of her best abilities, I'd say just make sure that you almost always have it on cooldown. If your team's at full health, just throw it at the enemies, charge some of your ultimate. If your team has literally, you know, no health left, of course, put it on yourselves, go for the heals. Right there was a great orb, used it directly on the enemy spawn, getting the Moira player a ton of ult charge. But overall, it's an ability that should just essentially always be out in the field doing something. I would try to give you, some secret tip, like to bounce it in a corner to make so that it doesn't fly away. Can't really do that. I think the best thing to do is to just mainly shoot it at whoever you want it to hit, honestly, and to try to shoot it at walls so that it makes sure that it bounces back and forth as many times as possible, just to get out the maximum amount of damage you're healing. But even if you can only heal for like 1 or 2 seconds with it, a lot of the times that's good enough to keep people alive for long enough to hopefully win the team fight. So I guess kind of think about it like that. Right now, they're just trying to finish the way through this. Goes for another ultimate. As you see again, you kind of want to wait a second for your ult, I guess, because, you do want to make sure you're getting as much healing as possible. But I think that it's a good idea to actually go for your ult pretty dang early. Because while you might not be getting out the maximum time of healing, you can still get out a ton of damage and scare a lot of people away from fighting. And especially on last point, that can be important because it can give you a lot of time, as they saw right there. I guess one final thing about offense that I want to mention as well, though, is that if you're playing Moira, always have a position to escape from. Always stay, even if you are, close up to the enemy's front line, always have a way that you can shift out and get out. And if you don't really understand the maps way too well, just make sure that you can maybe shift straight backwards and go behind a tank. While if you understand them quite well, of course, you can play, depending on the map. But that's kind of how that goes. Now we're on to defense, and on defense, what you can do, of course, just always spam orbs at the enemy cart, spam orbs at the enemy spawn, get a lot of ult charge really quickly. That's just kind of what you want to go for, because you have a lot more time to heal up on defense for the most part, so you don't really have to use your orbs as much for healing, while on offense they are very important to do that. So, that can kind of help you. Of course, the healing orb is important on defense, because if you're all next to each other, you can just make sure nobody dies, but, kind of goes both ways. As well, if you think that you're about to die and you have a Mercy next to you, try to put a healing orb right next to you that can bounce around so that it can save the Mercy, and make so that she lives for a while, so that her res can go through and save you. That situation won't always happen, obviously, but if you can get it to happen, it's kind of nice. On defense again, as well though, Gale is pushing up quite a ways, getting past his tanks quite often. And again, though, he does always have somewhere to run to, somewhere to fall to. At the very beginning, he just fell directly off of high ground, and it's just been kind of going on like that. And in team fights again, he's staying far back and trying to get line of sight. For the most part, when he's just, playing the pokey game, he's far up in the front, getting a lot of damage out, getting a lot of orbs, getting a lot of poke. But when team fights actually occur, he immediately jumps backwards. Moira is not very good in the middle of team fights because you're just gonna kind of die, or you're just gonna not be able to hit as many people as possible with your heals. It's for the most part better if you're behind everyone, you can heal everyone at the same time. So that's where you want to be in team fights, and that's where you want to be just kind of for the rest of the time. And if you can make sure that you know when to be where, you can actually get some of the highest damage out because you can consistently get out damage. It's really hard to mess with this character. While at the same time, you can then go back when team fights are needed and get out some of the highest healing in the game. You don't really want to be a consistent healer that always tops people off, by the way. You want to be someone that, your teammates are going in, they need to get that, just big burst of heals, and you go in and help them with that instead of, these guys have barely any damage, I'm going to use up a lot of my charge. And I should stay back next to my team all the time and make sure they're topped off. That's more for the other supports. While you can do it as Moira, and of course, if, you just wipe the enemy team, of course, fill everyone up to full health. If it's not like that, I'd say, kind of save your healing, get some damage out, and do whatever else. Now here again, just kind of pushing up. One thing to say, I guess, that I might have talked about a bit earlier is that, again, you won't be able to finish off kills way too often, but you can help your team get them really close. And especially if you have flankers, even on defense, it's kind of nice because you can just make sure that they aren't going to die for a second. Right here, it's a little bit hard because it is just both the supports. Your ultimate, as you can see right here, though, it essentially makes like whoever you're healing almost invincible if there's only 1 or 2 of them. So that's kind of nice. Of course, they can be bursted, but with consistent DPS characters, it really does counter quite well. And that's kind of how I feel like Moira works well against often. Either people that are kind of like slow burst, kind of like Junkrat, that can't always one-shot everybody, or people that have a lot of consistent DPS like Soldier because you can heal it up pretty well. Wait till everyone's low and then just burst heal it up and go in. While against people like, I guess, Genji, or against people like Tracer, it can be kind of hard because they just one-shot people and you don't really have any way to stop them like some of the other supports do. And your damage output can't really kill them like maybe a Zenyatta could, and you can't really save them like a Lucio could. So that, is a problem about this character. That's the thing I should say. While she does have a lot of good, and while she does have a ton of healing, a ton of damage, she doesn't have like some other special thing about her. She doesn't have that res, she doesn't have that damage boost, she doesn't have, anything like that. But keep in mind that if you have some of the highest DPS and some of the highest healing, you don't always need these other things. Sometimes just playing basically will win you the game. And that's just kind of the thing about it. I think people kind of focus sometimes too much on these other abilities. You know, the speed boost is important, the damage boost is important, but I think getting out more healing in the average regular competitive game is going to be more important than getting out a lot of this good utility. Maybe in esports it won't, and maybe Moira won't be great in esports, but especially in competitive, yeah, keeping everyone alive, as we've seen with Anna and Mercy, especially Mercy, that's going to help you win a ton of games. Alright, there we see a counter team wipe by our character, by GALE himself. And yeah, overall, when you are winning the engagement, of course, walk forward. When you're losing, walk backwards, try to heal everyone. Not much to say about that. For the majority of Overwatch, it is, you know, kind of cut and dry as you can see it. But there are some other things I guess I can tell you guys about. As far as in the last team fight as well, I'll try to stop saying that. Sorry. The enemy Genji did actually try to ult, but if you just wait for him to Swift Strike and then you shift backwards, it makes so that he can't really kill you, and you're going to be completely out of his range. You can out-damage him, out-deal him until he gets his Swift Strike back up. Hopefully he doesn't get a kill from someone else, but yeah, you can go for that and can stay pretty far away from Genji, or at least you can act as a really good distraction. Put a healing orb on yourself, try to damage him a little bit so you heal for an extra second, and maybe take off 1 or 2 swings from him. So either way, that can kind of help you out. Genji, I think, is a kind of hard character to deal with as a person. Of course, you can kill Genji as Moira. I'm not saying you can't do that because, you know, you have a lot of ways to kill him. But as well, if he has his ultimate, he has faster ways to kill you, and she doesn't really have as much super long self-peel as, I guess, some of the other supports. I don't know. For all the supports, they have troubles with Genji. But that's what I personally feel like you should be kind of trying to do at least a little bit. With your ultimate as well, we're seeing it literally all the time. Genji right there, kind of a bit of a problem. Trying to heal past that as much as you can. You want to make sure that you're super priority healing your most important target. If you can get, you know, 2 or 3 people healed at the same time, of course, that's really, really good. But trying to keep your Mercy alive with your ultimate, that's probably the most important thing you can possibly do. And then after that, trying to keep your soldier alive. And then after that, you know, kind of just going for the rest of your team. But as well, if you see like an enemy Genji at like a quarter HP, I think it's better to try to kill the Genji, you know, throw out that damage orb and then ultimate instead of trying to, you know, just I don't know, just try to heal up your team and hope that they kill him. Because oftentimes he can reflect, he's just kind of hard to hit, and your ultimate is very good at killing Genji if he isn't really going for you. So there you go with that. During this game, we also see this player, GALE, going for high ground a lot. I forgot to kind of mention that, but that's important as this character. It doesn't give you those headshots. That's a really good advantage with most characters, but it makes it that it's very hard for many people to kill you because they can't really get headshots on you. They don't really have way too much of their your hitbox that's available for them to hit. And you can just charge a lot of alt fire and a lot of ultimate. People don't really see your damage actually coming in. There's just a lot of benefits for going for that. Right here, finally pushing up through this last point, the enemies, they're not doing way too well, but, you know, doing okay. A thing I want to mention that I'm 99% sure I read is that this gives spell vamp. Your ultimate fire gives a little bit of spell vamp. So do keep that in mind as well, is that you can sometimes just try to kill people and hopefully lifesteal a little bit up instead of trying to, you know, put a healing orb on yourself. You can be kind of ballsy like that if you do hope for that. And I guess finally, you know, my final tip is make sure that you are next to your tanks for the most part. And if you are in a big trouble, make sure to actually shift towards your tanks instead of just shifting away by yourself. Because when you shift away by yourself, you're kind of just a sitting duck, you're probably going to die. While if you're next to your tanks and you can ask for their help, that might save you. Not going to say it always is going to save you, but it simply might, and that can be kind of nice. Anyways, as always, guys, that's all I'm going to say. I did have a few more tips nearing the end of this video that I couldn't get to, so if you want to see those, I'll look at the description below, and you'll be able to see them. It's like the last 5. Not super important, but, you know, some stuff you can look at. As always, guys, though, if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. Press the subscribe button if you want to see more stuff like this in the future. And I'll try to do another Moira video pretty soon, because we haven't really seen her way too much. I really like talking about this character. And tell me if you want to see some more, or as well, some of your own tips about this character that you've been able to see. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.